If there ever was the need to cater to a very specific niche of the gaming audience wanting to see cartoon animals piloting disproportionate steampunk-themed mechas with grabby limbs that grab things in a grabby, throwy way, Tail Concerto had it all covered. Produced by Namco Bandai and released in 1998 for the original PlayStation, the game was the first effort by CyberConnect 2, which would go on to make a significant splash in the market with titles such as Silent Bomber, Asura's Wrath, and a bunch of other titles no one cares about. Naturally, with a title like Tail Concerto, one would be inclined to assume it's a game about an unstable cat lady with delusions of grandeur trying to conduct an impromptu feline orchestra in an effort to recreate Toby Fox's Megalovania with the sound of cattails smacking onto each other. Or maybe that's just me? Instead, the world depicted in the game, and in the eventual sequels, is more akin to an episode of Tailspin viewed under the influence of 1970s anime, if 1970s anime could be consumed like LSD, which is a very roundabout way of saying it's an inherently interesting and creative idea that gets progressively more baffling the longer you think about it. It's about an anthropomorphic dog-like creature awkwardly meandering about in a silly-looking robot fighting and defeating enemies by way of pick-up and launch-based mechanics. It was the style at the time. Keeping up with the motif of bewildering video game titles, Solatorobo Red the Hunter was the 2010's sequel/spin-off of the original Megalotailovania Feline Orchestra in Concerto? Why did I think this was funny? Released a good 12 years after the first game as a Nintendo DS exclusive, Solatorobo Nel of Arciel tells a completely new story with different characters that only marginally connects to the previous iteration. This time, we feel the potentially flea-ridden shoes of generic DeviantArt Fursona number 387 as he travels around a steampunk-themed skyscape of floating citadels aboard his trusty battle mecha. His actual name is Red Savarin, and he's here to kick some tail, chew bone-shaped treats, and hopefully get a mercenary job that pays. He also has a younger sister by the totally real name of Chocolat Gelato. Because why not? During the process of failing a secret document retrieval mission inside a very unfortunately named flying vessel, he stumbles upon Elle, an androgynous cat girl that he hilariously mistakes for a boy, only to hilariously discover she's indeed female in the most hilarious way possible, through a combination of happenstance, misunderstanding, and a hot shower scene, which is apparently hilarious. My patience towards the worst and most obstinate tropes from Japanese media wears thinner and thinner as the years go by. Our hairy protagonist gets a hold of a mysterious medallion of great importance that quite mysteriously activates his obligatory latent powers once in his paws. Naturally, before you could cry "Kyubey!" from the top of your lungs. This script is a bit dated, isn't it? Elle proposes him to make a contract with her in exchange of an untold amount of riches. The kind of riches that almost certainly does not actually exist. In the typical conventions of this narrative style, Furball Mackenzie has to find the 3 MacGuffin stones of world-dooming prophecy before the customary group of incompetent evil bad guys gets in on that action. There also appears to be some sort of rejected Kingdom Hearts secret boss hanging in the area, but I'm pretty sure that has nothing to do with anything, especially not that suspicious plot-related medallion in Red's pockets. Cough. On a side note, judging by various arbitrarily recorded audio files you could hear whenever engaged in characters' dialogue, everyone in the world seems to either be speaking French or a reasonable French facsimile performed by painfully obvious non-French voice actors. That is, except for the occasional Japanese word getting thrown out there whenever Red's little sister had to say something that I may or may not have intentionally ignored. Now, let us talk about gameplay. Solatorobo Skies of Arcadia is technically an action role-playing game in the sense that it has extremely basic experience points and leveling up mechanics, hence barely qualifying as one. Given the hardware limitations of the handheld system, there is no sandbox-style overworld exploration to be had. Red can travel from a fixed location to the next with his ship and walk around the cities and dungeons aboard his personal robot, although he can descend from it in order to open treasure chests and retrieve semi-hidden but not really collectibles. As mentioned before, the core gameplay element revolves on the Mechas' ability to grab objects or enemies and violently throw them in the general direction of their ultimate demise. The storytelling has a linear pace, but you are free to slightly deviate from said path by partaking in side quests available to you from quest brokers in any of the places you visit. Their successful completion will reward you with money, mission ranks to access even more quests, and experience points. Assignments can go from pirate thwarting ventures to time-based shenanigans that nobody likes, to fighting in tournaments and so on. Needless to say, it becomes repetitive after a while. Leveling up is a minor focus in the gameplay, since it will only slightly increase your health bar, while other physical power augmentations can be achieved by customizing Red's RoboPal with additional components available from shops and by utilizing spirit crystals to create more space to allocate said components, which is a mini-game all unto itself. Of course, the fact that the game tends to be unchallenging won't demand a great deal of effort from your part, or at least not in its first 10 hours or so. All jokes considered, there is nothing fundamentally wrong with Solatorobo Sins of Our Fathers, aside from a seemingly inexistent level of difficulty, bare-bones characterizations, and a few wincing dialogue lines. In fact, I dare say that Solatorobo, the Red Among Us, was and still remains one of my favorite DS titles to this day. The reason for that, however, has less to do with the game itself and more to do with the far more fascinating themes that are explored once the real plot finally gets going in the second half, more or less at the same time in which this furry mecha hybrid anime pretender with little to no substance effectively turns into an utterly insane crossover between the Saturday morning Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon and a less narrow-minded version of Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann, sans all the penis metaphors, that is. After dealing with the less than stellar first round villains, actual superpowered human-like creatures commandeered by the real antagonist of this game, Dr. Gendo Robotnik, not his actual name, decide to show up and start wrecking the proverbial dog residue out of the entire IRL furry fandom in the name of apocalyptic accelerationism. Also, Furball Mackenzie can now turn into a human too, and potentially lose his mind to the irrational need to follow a very specific order given to him by some interdimensional weapon of mass destruction that's supposed to be a representation of hell and the end of days. and also happens to look like the Death Star, because why not? By the way, do not be alarmed by all of these spoilers. The cover art of the games box, as well as the 2 animated opening sequences included in the game, do a fine job in spoiling all the most important twists for your begrudging enjoyment. At this point in the story, Solatorobo Free and Knuckles begins to demonstrate a lot of potential with its themes relating to humanity's path towards its inevitable self-destruction. It all turns out to be a cautionary tale about the negative consequences of technological arrogance, blind progress, resource depletion, and war that barely manages not to be as heavy-handed as I just made it sound right now. Red and his compatriots are, by all intents and purposes, the descendants of mankind, and by banding together to fight against the threat of extinction, they are able to prove their worth as a species, thus finally learning from past mistakes. In other words, this is exactly like my Sonic the Hedgehog fanfiction! Well, it's a bit better, but let me have this, come on. Let me have this. Solatorobo Wars Episode 7 The Four Awakens might have its problems, but the sheer insanity of its premise and the universally understandable and topical message it delivers make for a memorable experience, at the very least. The character design was done by Takayuki Isobe of .ac Curriculum, and the introductory sequences were realized by acclaimed animation studio Madhouse. This is all to say, it's a game with some pedigree. In conclusion, you definitely don't need to be a furry to enjoy this. But it helps. So, you've reached the end of the video. Well, the scripted part of the video at the very least. And oh boy, what a script it was. You might have noticed that some of its references or its humor might feel a bit dated. That's because I had this particular script hanging around for a while. I've been meaning to make a video review of this particular video game for some time, but I've always put it off, and now, well, I couldn't be bothered to rewrite this script in its entirety, and I thought it still worked for the most part. There are a few elements that I have omitted from this review. For example, there are several scenes in which Red interacts with an openly, explicitly gay character that flirts with him, and he reacts exactly in the way you might expect him to react in a Japanese game from 2010. Because, again, annoying, terrible, lazy tropes. Also, that point after the shower scene when he starts spouting gender essentialist rhetoric about how girls and boys should act. Oof, that has not aged well. And there's a car outside. Well, that's lovely. What was I saying? Something about this game. Oh, right. This game has a couple of problematic elements to it that have not aged well, because of course they have not, but all the while, do not take all the snark that I channeled through this review to heart. This game actually means a lot to me. It came out just at the right time for me. It is a piece of nostalgia by now, because it's been, well, 11 years. since its original release, and that's something. Also, some of you might have noticed that CyberConnect 2 this year was celebrating its 25th anniversary into this business since its inception. And they celebrated this occurrence by releasing their newest title, which is the long-awaited yet sadly very unexpected new game into the so-called Tail Bronx series. For context, the same series that Tail Concerto and Solatorobo, Sins of Arcadia Among Us, or whatever the title was supposed to be. Get it? Silly titles, I make fun. So, we have a third game in this series. Well, technically a fourth one, because there was a mobile title that lasted for a while. It was a Japanese exclusive, and nobody knows about it, so we're not talking about that. The last game they have just released, as of this August in fact, is Fuga Melodies of Steel, and it's technically a prequel to the whole story in Solatorobo and Tail Concerto. And it's a very different game from what you would expect it to be. It is not a happy-go-lucky action mecha adventure. It does have customization, but it's actually a very linear, turn-based strategy RPG. And it reminds me a lot of Darkest Dungeon, if Darkest Dungeon was, again, very linear, very streamlined, very short, and much easier. I love this game. And that's the short of it. That's the long and short of it. I love this game, and I really want people to buy this. I want people to buy this just so we can get more games from this series made by these people. And I'm not sponsored by CyberConnect 2, I wish I were, but I don't need to be sponsored by them to tell you, please buy this game. Buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it right now. If there is any chance whatsoever to see titles such as Tail Concerto and Solatorobo being remastered and become widely available in today's market, that is your chance, because you might get your hands on Tail Concerto through not quite legitimate means, but Solatorobo, you're not going to get Solatorobo anytime soon. It's a title for the Nintendo DS from 11 years ago. And from what I understand, it is quite expensive should you actually find a copy on eBay. It's very rare, and really the only way for you to play it right now would be, again, through less than legitimate means, if you know how to run a Nintendo DS emulator. So that should be fun for you to figure out, hence why, for accessibility means, I want you to make Fuga Melodies of Steel a success. I want this game to be successful, so that we may get the chance to see those older titles floating around again, and hopefully to see more titles in the future from this very same developer about this very same very fascinating universe of cat and dog furries and robots and tanks and everything in between. Fantasy, action, science fiction, adventure. It has everything, really. So yes, buy Fuga Melodies of Steel. That's my message for you. Now, with that all aside, let's have a bit of a real talk, shall we? You probably have read the title of this video. It's a series finale of sorts. I am not announcing my retirement from YouTube activity or from making videos. Mind you, I still do that because I enjoy doing that. But this latest video, the video you're seeing right now, that's going to be my last written video review in this particular format for the foreseeable future. If you've been following me for a long time, then you must remember that the last time I did a written review, a video review in that traditional style, well, that happened a few years ago. I don't even remember when exactly, that's how long ago it was. I have drifted away from that old particular output and just decided to just do whatever the heck I pleased, and as a result, all the content you see from my channel right now is either podcasts or let's plays or weird hybrids of the two. And I'm fine with doing that. I much prefer having the opportunity to have a free-form discussion with my pals, or with you right now, as I am doing on this blurb, very long end blurb that's going to be longer than the actual written part. I am all burnt out on the old written video review format. At some point in my life I realized, much like most people ever on YouTube, that I could not make a career out of making funny video reviews of things I like or dislike, which was the whole intent behind the series Master Presentations. And so I decided that I was going to do one last video in this series to end it on a high note of sorts, and that was going to be it. That one video was going to be about Solatorobo, because I care about this game. It means a lot to me, as I already established. I had a script already prepared for it. I was not really in the mood to write a whole new script. So I just went and did it. You know, like a murder, I just went up and did it. With little pre-plan. And I hope you enjoyed it too. But that's going to be it. Now, I know what you might be asking to me. Again, if you're a long-time follower of this channel. Madhog, why? Oh, why did you review a video game in your film and animation show? Well, that's because I had a show for reviewing video games. It was called The Dream Traveler, Klonoa reference, by the way. Sad that I never did review Klonoa, come to think of it, but oh well. I've already retired that a long time ago. In fact, I retired that one on a significant high note, on a sort of review / out loud gushing of the game Undertale in 2015. I could not think of a better way to retire a show that I was not passionate about anymore. So, for lack of a better alternative, I decided to just review Solatorobo in the format of Master Presentations. Even though it's not film, it's not cinema, it's not television, but at least it has animation in it by Studio Madhouse, so that technically counts. And what, let me just say, what a great animated opening this game has. Not just for the time, but in general, it's one of the best ever. The music is inspiring, inspirational, and dramatic. The animation is also all of those things, and funny too. The art direction of the game in general, of Solatorobo, is fan-freaking-tastic. Especially for the hardware limits of the Nintendo DS, which I'm sure this game was pushing, and it runs really well in spite of that, on the handheld system. Darn good character design too. I just really like this game, and I hope that I've managed to convey that to you in a sufficient manner, in spite of all the jokes and joshing of that video review. I cannot believe I left that Madoka Magica reference in it. Megalotailovania? concerto of felines or something along those lines. That's me legitimately asking, why did I think this was funny? Why did I left it in? I don't know. Why do people do things? Why do people wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to do something funny today? It's not funny then. Oh well, hopefully you'll get a laugh or two. To summarize the shambling approximation of a post-video blurb that this was supposed to be, for your convenience, I'm retiring Master Presentations, my supposedly long-term video review series, because I'm not passionate about that anymore. I don't want to do reviews in that format anymore. I prefer podcasting with my friends, as you might have noticed. And that's exactly the kind of content you will expect and must expect from this channel from here on out. Which is the same content, le content, it's French, you see, that you've seen from this channel for the past few years anyway, so nothing really will change for you in any significant manner. Expect the usual dramatis lectio whenever we do one of those, our read/riff fanfiction show. Expect the usual Mad Play podcast, which is our hybrid between Let's Play and podcasting, as the title implies. And who knows, you might get some new classic Mad Play series in the future when we do regular Let's Play, but every video that I post on this, save for the occasional once in a blue moon exception, is going to be just a collaborative effort between me and my many mates of Team Yume. Because that's what I like to do nowadays on the internet. I like to engage in group activities with my fellow internetians. With my fellow Caninu and Felinecos on the internet. There! I did a reference thing. I'm not cutting any of this, by the way. If I am cutting anything from this, it's going to be very little, but as of now, this is where we part ways. This is the end of an era, as you might want to put it. I don't want it to be sad. I don't want it to be some sort of depressing eulogy. Rather, I want to celebrate that this era, this particular slice of my life is done. Not coming back to it. And, well, the writing was on the wall already, but now you have auditory confirmation from moi that that particular era is finished. And I don't really have much to add to all that. That's how things are. It is what it is. Master Presentations is officially now retired. Who knows what new ventures will come along my way. You have to realize that YouTube is not a career for you. It barely qualifies as a hobby. Something to do with friends. I don't post videos as often as I used to because, once again, I'm all burnt out. And this is the state of things. And this is where I say goodbye. Thank you for joining me on this ride. Oh, what the heck! We cannot end it like that, on such a dour note. Let us bring things up a bit, shall we? This is all very off the cuff, really. I'm not even using my microphone. Yes, that is a sock. Anyway, I'm going to do you, a brief showcase of some of my games in my collection. The most obscure ones, to be precise. Hey, look at this! It's a jade cocoon! I haven't seen one of those since the launch of the PlayStation 2! It is the most recent acquisition in my collection, isn't it? A Pokemon-style RPG that does its own thing quite interestingly. What else do we have here? Well, of course, there's... we don't care about this, don't care about this, don't care about this. Klonoa! The remake for the Wii. You know, the one nobody ever played or even knew about. That one. I have it, of course I have it. It's the only reason to still have a Wii for me, so that I can play it. And this is... hold on. Shut up. And this is Klonoa 2, Lunatia's Veil, the sequel, which was also a launch title for the PlayStation 2. Good times to be had all around. Sorry about the lighting, that's the only light I can have. The light of day, that is. There's Shadow the Hedgehog. Speaking of Nintendo Wii, this is Fragile Dreams! Farewell, Ruins of the Moon. It's bad. It's terrible. But it's ultra rare, so... lucky me. Sakura Wars. So Long My Love, the only Sakura Wars released in the West, aside from the current last one. Ooh, what's this? It's Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. This means a lot to somebody who grew up with Tatsunoko animations. And that actually knows them, that is. Yeah. The Last Story, Super Mario Galaxy. The Nights into Dreams sequel. Oh, let's go to my Nintendo DS. Of course, there's Solatorobo. Oh, look at this. It's a ghost. It's a ghost trick. I have it and you don't. You most certainly don't. Let's see. Oh, this is the very rare Nintendo DS version of the first Disgaea game. Of course, you can get Disgaea pretty much anywhere nowadays. But this is a unique copy of a version that's very hard to find. You know, it's a collector's item, if you will. That is Dragon Quest IX, Ever Oasis, Animal Crossing. Don't care about this. Several Dragon Quest games. The Chrono Trigger version for the DS. Mario and Luigi. Final Fantasy. Ooh, indeed. Another code, 2 memories. Boy, I haven't touched this one in eons. First-person puzzle adventure game. Very rare indeed. It had a bad twist at the end. What else do we have here? Oh, there's a Game Boy Advance version. Well, only existing version of an Astro Boy game. But back to PlayStation 2. Ooh, I almost lost this one. La Pucielle Tactics, the precursor to the Disgaea series. Well, that about does it for my short presentation. I don't have that many games anymore, at least not in physical form, that is. But what I do have is pretty respectable, I would say. What a mess. Oh gosh, everything is falling apart. So, with that, I shall finally bid you adieu and thank you from the bottom of my... what's in the chest? Heart! From the bottom of my heart. Thank you for sticking with me all these years, if you have. If you have not, well, I hope you will stick with me somewhat with whatever it is I'm going to do in the foreseeable future. This has been Madhog Die Master, and I guess this is the end of the video. the entire video, that is. Good night. Mwah! Have a nice day.